What is up, guys? Rick Kakis here. Thank you so much for joining me, and today we are going to be taking the brand new Truth Exotic Rocket Launcher through the entirety of the Last Wish raid and ranking it on each encounter. This has already cemented itself as a very powerful PvP exotic, but how does it fare in PvE? Well, let's find out. Also, if you want to get this rocket launcher yourself, I've done a complete guide for how to do so. It's linked up above. So, let's get started here by taking a look at this weapon's exotic perks. Firstly, intrinsically, it has Prototype Truth Seeker. This weapon's rockets have tracking, lock onto targets when aiming down sights, so a glorified tracking normal perk. But it has another very unique perk, Grenades and Horseshoes. Projectiles will detonate when they are within close proximity to their targets. So if you would otherwise miss and go just past an enemy, it will explode and guarantee you that hit. And so we begin here with the first encounter against Kalli. To increase our damage, we're using as much Riven's Bane gear as we can. We have a Titan with a melting point, and we do have a Well of Radiance. So we open up in that first damage phase, absolutely go to town with this rocket launcher. It's capable of outputting a lot of rockets very fast. It does have a 3-round magazine. Doesn't come up too much when you're already in a well with Lunafaction, but in any event, we were able to do about half damage to Kalli in just the first section of her damage phase. The problem was that we then promptly ran out of rocket launcher ammo. The truth, like I said, it spews rockets and then you're going to be left with nothing. So we did have to use loaded questions and switch to, I switched to an Outbreak Prime to finish her off. And we got that finish, and it's certainly not a terrible result. There are extremely powerful weapons that take up primary, especially if you do switch the Outbreak, and most notably special weapon slots. So you can use the Truth to start doing your damage and then easily finish off with maybe a shotgun, maybe, again, the loaded question is a fantastic option, and that's not that unreasonable, but, the Truth was not able to one-phase Kalli. And in fact, to give you guys some perspective, when we did the Outbreak Perfected versus Last Wish, it did about the same damage in that first part of the damage phase. So a primary is doing the same as a heavy, and therefore, the Truth, it's definitely above average, but it's going to get a 6 out of 10. So, from this point onward, because we identified that the Truth wasn't doing a phenomenal amount of damage, we had one player take off the Truth and put on the Tractor Cannon. Shooting an enemy with that is going to result in 50% more damage from void weapons. The Truth is a void weapon. By the way, if we had that on against Kalli, we would have done more damage, but definitely still would not have one-phased her. But we move on to the next encounter here with Shuro Chi. Now this is a little difficult because the Truth has a pretty large blast radius. We had to make sure our well was a little bit further away than it would normally be. We also had to make sure that people, when they took down her shields, were running outside and back into the well so they didn't run in front of people shooting the Truth. It is a little bit dangerous using this weapon, but as you can see against Shuro Chi, and with the help of that Tractor Cannon, it kills her pretty fast. Like, really fast, actually. In fact, we aren't even going that hard. Most of us are coming out of that encounter with 3, 4, sometimes 5 rockets remaining. We didn't have to use all of them on that one encounter. So we move on to damage her again, and you see pretty much the same results. We use the other half of our reserves or whatever, and we kill her really darn fast. So, from this point of the third damage phase forward, not all of us have rockets at the same time. We're picking up rockets when we can via heavy ammo drops, and when we have them, we always use them, but a lot of us are having to rely on our loaded questions or whatever to get that damage in, and it's really not that bad. We're always using Tractor Cannon, and even if just 2 people shoot around 2 or 3 Truth rockets, each one does a significant amount of damage. The Truth is no joke, actually pretty darn good against Shuro Chi, surprisingly. However, the downside is that constant need for ammo. You're going to be out of it very fast, unlike a special weapon. and you are going to also have to change your strategy for DPSing Shuro Chi. Like we had to do, move the well further back, be very careful not to walk in front of each other. It would probably just be easier to set up the well right beside her and escalation shotgun her, to be honest. But even with that said, the damage is undeniable, and therefore the truth against Shuro Chi gets an 8 out of 10. Not the best, but certainly above average. Alright, so moving on from there, we have the third encounter against Swolgaroth, aka Morgeth. How does the truth do here? Well, this is an interesting one. You have one big damage phase, you go all out, you're close range, so we are going to be using the tractor cannon with a bunch of truths. This is really the truth's time to shine, and you are going to have a first part of this encounter, however. So you will have to just kill adds, unfortunately, because the truth needs all of its ammo and it spits it out so quickly, and it is a heavy weapon. You're kind of not really using it against the adds. Now, that's not the absolute detriment of the world, because you're totally fine using primary and special to deal with those guys and then just saving truth, but if you're melting with an outbreak that can kill Morgeth, you get to use it like all the time against everything, so that is an advantage. But moving on from there to the actual damage phase, we got in position a little bit further back again than usual, went to town, and as you can see, oh my goodness, it rips through Morgeth. Like, we take him to almost nothing so fast. Shockingly fast. Like, he's only at like 50-60% when we're out of truth ammo, but that is the thing. Although the truth did phenomenal damage against Morgeth, it wasn't quite able to one-phase him by itself. We all ran out of truth ammo, and then just a couple of loaded question shots finished him off. So it was absolutely no problem getting the one phase with the help of the truth, but the truth itself wasn't able to do it. We were also using, rocket ammo reserve, so you'd have to have like multiple of that perk on. You'd have to have completely loaded out in Riven's Bane gear to completely one phase him with the truth. But do you really need to? Again, it left him with an absolute sliver so quickly, and then, one or two grenades, you basically just spit on Morgeth and he's gonna die at that point. So I'm still very impressed with this weapon, and I think it earns yet another 8 out of 10. Okay, so next up we have the Vault encounter, and this one's always interesting because there's no boss to kill. You're just using this weapon against normal adds. However, there are some more powerful adds with the Eyes of Riven that you have to kill, and also the Knights that are going to wipe your team. How is the truth here? Well, actually quite good. So this thing can one-shot kill, like always one-shot kill the Eyes of Riven. Even when you are not, direct impacting is very hard because of grenades and horseshoes, but even when you're not hitting directly and you're shooting, beside, the blast radius is so big and the damage is so great that you kill those eyes every single time with one shot. That's pretty sweet. And against the Knights, it's actually not bad either. Now, the damage isn't absurd. You're not going to one-shot them, you're not even going to half-health them a lot of the time, but you're always going to flinch them, and you're always going to hit them. With tracking and grenades and horseshoes, it's like impossible to miss. So it is actually really nice to get that guaranteed hit, do a decent amount of damage. They always stop in their tracks, they flinch, and then you switch to your special and finish them off. Not to mention that if there is some point where you need to kill a bunch of low tier red adds, like one shot will decimate basically everything on your screen. The blast radius is phenomenal. Some little downsides are that, yes, it always guarantees a hit, but it would be nice to do a little bit more damage, to be perfectly honest. If you have a rocket launcher that has tracking and cluster bomb, how likely are you to miss those Knights anyways? That's a legitimate question. Another thing is that there's so many adds running around, it's very possible to be shooting the Eye of Riven or the Knight and then a random Scion kind of run in front of you. Now, normally you just sail that rocket by his head, but grenades and horseshoes is going to trigger and it's going to blow up in your face. Aside from those small scenarios, I still was impressed on this part with the truth, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Nearly an 8, still above average, but I have definitely seen better. In any event, it's time to move on to Big Daddy, or I should say Big Mama Riven, and the big test of DPS in this raid. And you know, we going for the cheese, right? This is where you want to see if a weapon can make it or break it in terms of the damage output department. Now again, we are using that tractor cannon, and the fact that this is void is a big advantage. A melting point that you would usually use against Riven is going to last 5 seconds. The tractor cannon's effect lasts for 10 seconds, and you can reapply it just by shooting. So you're going to be doing 50% more damage way longer than you normally are with melting point. So we went ham on Riven with 5 truths, 1 tractor, and as you can see, I killed myself, but also looking at the damage, it was actually pretty decent. One person nearly got 2 million damage, and the rest of us were really not that far behind. Now, the reason I killed myself, in fact I had to rewind the footage, it was really weird. It's that grenades and horseshoes that I've been talking about. I think it was actually the Eye of Riven shot the Captain Blast of Darkness, grenade and horseshoes triggered from that and blew up right in my face. So that's the downside of that perk right on display. But even with that, the damage numbers were fairly impressive, and yet not enough, definitely not enough to one-phase Riven. In fact, we did it again because the truth spews out so much damage. So quickly, we did all truths and then quickly switched to loaded questions and other things and tried to make the most of that, and still, we were just a bit short of that one phase. So all in all, the sad truth of the matter is that a rocket launcher with cluster bombs that's just a legendary is so much better for DPSing Riven than this exotic rocket launcher, and therefore the truth gets a 7 out of 10. Certainly above average because of that damage output, but not enough to get the one phase. In any event, it is time to move on to the final encounter of the Last Wish, and that is running the Heart of Riven. Now, in this section of these videos, I usually say, you know, the weapon is decent or maybe it's not that good, but we usually use supers. But for the first time kind of ever, the truth, the weapon we were testing was the star of this encounter. Like, we weren't really using supers. Why use a super when you have this phenomenal lock-on massive blast radius rocket launcher? Every time we saw a group of phalanxes taking phalanxes, we just mowed them down with the truth. It was actually really, really good, specifically in this encounter. And when you do get teleported in, it's also pretty good. Again, it does mow down massive numbers of red health enemies that bunch up, which they very much do in this encounter. Was alright against the knights. Again, just like Vault, it flinched them, it stunned them, but I wish it would do a little bit more damage is the only thing. So yeah, the truth actually did shine in this final encounter, and therefore I'm going to give it, honestly, a 9 out of 10 in the Queenswalk. But that does conclude our test. Overall, in the Last Wish raid, I think the truth earns a pretty solid 7.5 out of 10. It's certainly not outputting as much damage as you see in other exotic weapons, but it's very good against adds, and it's not that bad against the bosses, and can basically one-phase quite a lot of them. However, basically is a bit different than guaranteed one phase, and that's why it doesn't get higher. In any event, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, found it informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.